I'm Del Stevens, as it says, and here we are in the death slot, the last show of the afternoon after lunch, everybody comatose, ready to go home, one foot on the bus. Something a little kind of disruptive to your Mahara thoughts, I thought I would present, because why not, about organisation-centric portfolios. Before we get going, I ought to say that I am a huge fan of Mahara. This is not I want to destroy the Mahara empire at any point, but I think that in some cases it's a bit tricky for corporates particularly to understand how Mahara can help them. And in the modern milieu of training particularly, that actually being able to show people how Mahara really could help is part of our role. So this is kind of a proposal, if you will. A conversation, certainly. By all means, feel free to jump in and question, ask, contradict. This is a work in progress, very much so, and I'm genuinely interested in your feedback, either today or offline afterwards. So I wanted to set the scene a little bit about our credentials in this space particularly. Presumably you know about Catalyst, our banner is here, but we do kind of these things which are open source, way beyond just Mahara, so lots of web things with Drupal and Silverstripe, document management with Alfresco, lots of other things, and Totara and Moodle, particularly the LMSs that we support. And a lot of our work is focused on that. As Georgina is proof, we have people in Australia as well as here in New Zealand, and off in the wilds of the UK in Brighton as well. So we're a reasonably sizable enterprise, about 250 at the last count. I've been in learning and development since about 1997, and I was trained by the military of all people about how to do things like training needs analysis and training audit and all those gripping things that you have to learn how to do in instructional design. Since then, a computer science degree followed by a master's in online and distance education. Online and distance education, can't even say the words. And now I'm the e-learning team leader for Catalyst down in Wellington. And I think that's true, round peg, round hole. I like my job, it suits me, it does the kind of things that I like doing. And in terms of what our team do, it's more than just the Mahara LMS focus. Yes, certainly that is the focus of our operations, but we do lots of things around building content and lots of things around learning consultancy as well, about helping people solve real-world L&D problems. And it's good fun. We have lots of customers for whom we do all of this stuff, lots of district health boards, education providers up and down the world. I'm sorry, Christina, there aren't any Australian universities up there, and they really should be. I'm very sorry. We do lots and lots of New Zealand government clients, and we do an ever-increasing number of kind of corporate clients as well. And the topic of today's conversation really came about from conversations around corporate use of e-portfolios. So about a year ago, I was asked by Jardines Matheson, to go and talk to them and their 200 HR managers about learning and development. If you don't know who Jardines Mathesons are, massive multinational conglomerate. Revenue last year, 42.1 billion. But that's on the slide apparently, so who knows, they might not last the year. But really are this massive multinational, shipping lines, chains of hotels, and their dairy farm organisation stretches from one end of Asia to the other. Just a massive, massive organisation. And they said, Del, would you like to come and talk to us about learning? Okay, yeah, I could do that. And then they said, how about you do it in Disneyland, Hong Kong? I said, well, if I have to. So I went and spoke about learning development in, that is Cinderella's ballroom, if you don't mind, in Disneyland, Hong Kong. And I wanted to talk about social constructivist learning, because I'm an L&D guy and I have been for a while. And they didn't. They wanted to talk about this kind of off-on binary, have we done some training? How do we track that? How do we manage that? And I thought that was the wrong answer. But their argument is some of it's cultural in Asia, to be fair, because some of it is around, well, the instructor should have the power. So empowering learners is actually quite a tricky conversation. But a lot of it is about how we talk about Mahara. Those three statements up there have all come from the abstracts of presentations that have been made over the last 2 days. It's about the individual. It's not about the group, the organisation, it's about the learner. Even this card that we handed out to everybody says about empowering learners. It doesn't say anything about the corporation. And so from a business perspective, some of that's a tricky conversation. So next door, just a little while ago, let's prepare people and demonstrate their skills so they can go and get a job. Well, hang on. If I'm employing this person, do I really want to skill them up and get them to present their skills in such a way that they can leave? This is a tricky conversation. Some of the processes that corporations have are commercial in confidence. They don't particularly want people to just say, I can share this with the web, hooray. And the other thing that both Stephen Price from Waikato earlier today and Georgie from the University of Canberra both had to say is that the usability of Mahara is not amazing. His SUS, which was Service Usability Survey, I think. I was hoping you'd be here to correct me. It kind of put it in that okay bracket. Not great, about 50%-ish usability. And Georgie too was talking about how much effort she has to put into getting both staff and students to get around the system to get it to work meaningfully within their organisations. And that is the perception from the corporate view. I'm going to spend money to provide this capability, which potentially leaches people from my organisation and costs me money to train them to do so. If you are, just as a random example, the e-learning manager for a small IT-based company, that's not a simple conversation to have. And yet, from the same extracts that we were talking about, from those abstracts, from these very conferences, use Mahara to capture vocational competence. And that's what I'm interested in trying to do, is to reconcile those two very different conversations about how do we get a corporation, an industry, people who are actually really focused on bottom line to understand that this is potentially hugely powerful. So I have a plan. I will share with you the 3 other slides that I took with me to Jardines. In the kind of general scheme of things, when you join a new organisation, you rock up and you know nothing, right? Assuming you've just come out of university. And I've used, it doesn't render too well from here. So we've got competent practitioner, master practitioner, and mentor. They're fairly arbitrary terms, but they just demonstrate progression after you've arrived. But out there in the training world of corporation, this is increasingly important. This 70-20-10 model about being able to deliver most of your training on the job, 70% of it, in fact, 20% from our peers, 10% of formal training. So the idea is, we arrive in the organisation, we get that 10% of training, and then we're let loose in the organisation, and we're going to survive. Not only are we going to survive, we're going to get better over time. And then when we've reached superstardom of our first role, the organisation will be able to look across the enterprise and say, that guy's a star. We should move him and promote him. Except it doesn't work. It doesn't work for lots of reasons. But a lot of the reasons that it doesn't work are about the HR invisibility of that superstar. Because actually, if I'm Bobby's manager and he's my superstar, he's helping me. He's helping my team. I don't really want to share that information with the rest of the world who are going to nick him, so I'm going to keep that here. And unless your appraisal organisation is really well swept up, that stardom capability is invisible across the organisation, which actually means you're stopping Bobby's career and making him unhappy, and eventually he's going to leave. And this is the nirvana state that I try to tell Jardine Matheson about. Because down here, whatever your organisation is, it'll have some operational outputs. And it's the operation that should drive the setting of benchmarks, that should be able to articulate what the training requirements are. As L&D people, yeah, we should facilitate that. Through that 70-20-10 model, we absolutely should be able to help you get there. But you as the operation, you should be the people setting what the marks are. And if we've got all of that, I do apologise, I isn't rendering very well at all. If we've got all of that, and if we've got some Mahara capability, some e-portfolio and some good appraisal systems, that does in fact feed into this reporting system, which informs this talent management and succession planning. It's a great idea. But there's a problem. As an L&D professional, in 70-20-10, only 10% of my training is measured. Suddenly, all of the tools with which previously I've been able to say, this person arrived knowing this, formal training event, this person now has changed to be able to do this, all gone away. 90% of the training that's being committed in this organisation is simply not assessed. It's not very good, is it? That's what me as an L&D professional, I'm leaning on this. This is how I'm proving my value to the operation with 10% of the view of the world. And the other problem is, for that 10%, we're all aware of Kirkpatrick. Yeah. There's no embarrassed faces, that's good, it's a nice place to start from. So Kirkpatrick evaluation, it says that we're supposed to be able to see this stuff. Changes in behaviour and results back at the workplace, how are we changing how is our learning impacting the workforce out there on the coalface. And historically, and I've been doing this for 20 years, pockets of excellence of this one and this one, are pretty rare. In fact, one of the few that I've seen is in the military, where you can actually order people to provide feedback. Because actually in the real world, where orders aren't a thing, you can ask people all day, but I'm too busy. You're not getting that feedback. So we're back in that 10% of our learning. This is how we validate our training, right? This is how we say, Joe Bloggs, who arrived knowing nothing, now knows something with our basic assessment. And to be honest with you, this, largely redundant. Heresy, I know, but mostly I get information about what the sandwiches were like, so it's not really helping me. But that level 2, 90% of what I've always relied on as an L&D professional suddenly evaporated. I'm getting 10% of the picture of level 2 evaluation. It's a horror show. Genuinely. My pitch to Jardine said, what we need to do in this social constructivist world maybe looks like this. In order to capture a much broader picture of capability, of change, then actually we need to look more broadly across the organisation and the way that we capture information, rather than just our learning management system and our evaluation forms. So the workflow kind of works like this. The business puts up some form of news item, business announcement, even a small bite-sized learning piece. We attach to it the opportunity for you to comment. Tell us what you think about it. We create wikis within the organisation that capture pools of expert knowledge, because actually through doing those couple of things, what we identify is who are our domain knowledge experts around these particular topics. We get people to do blogs, we get them to collect evidence of what they've submitted into this e-portfolio, and actually we've now got a really rich picture for the organisation, because if they're making forum posts and wiki posts, we as an organisation get a flavour for what people are thinking. We get a flavour for what morale looks like across the whole organisation. It's a much better picture. We've had to work a lot harder to get there, but it's just better. But we can capture and recognise informal learning. No, they said. We don't like it. And I've been to talk to a lot of other organisations, they don't like it either, particularly people with call centres. So I've been speaking to Spark, ACC, and somebody else who escapes me. High turnover of staff. Training is vital in this organisation. Vital. And they have no time. KiwiBank, that was the other one. KiwiBank estimated that for their average help desk person in the call centre, they're getting 15 minutes a month of formal education training. Whether it's compliance that they must do, or whatever else it is, 15 minutes. Unsurprisingly, talking to the people who are actually doing the job, they're cheating. They're cheating their butts off, frankly. They're jumping straight to the quiz of the e-learning, guess, 85%, that'll do me, I'm out of here. back to the shop floor. And so that idea, that nirvana that I posted up before is just broken immediately. If they're sitting formal assessment, they are off revenue. And that's the way it's tracked. They've got pre-existing tools. They don't want new wikis and forums and all these other kind of things. They've got Slack, they've got Link, they've got Skype for Business. They've got all of these other tools already. They're definitely not blogging. If they are, they're probably getting sacked. And that's the problem. They've got no time to learn an e-portfolio tool. So how do we spin all of this 70-20 problem, 70-20-10 problem, our inability to capture this kind of informal learning and this basic nature of being time poor? It's not that. But I think it could be this. So hopefully you've all been exposed to smart evidence over the last couple of days. Okay? And in my head, smart evidence allows you to say, this person's done a thing because they've submitted something. And then within the LMS solutions that we support, we built this thing over here. And I apologize because I updated this presentation just before I came up here and accidentally swapped this image. So this image now makes no sense. It talks about putting on anti-setting fire to yourself clothing and things. So it doesn't talk about call centers anymore. So sorry about that. But it is that kind of handheld manager wandering around the shop floor, able to go, tick, 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 seen that, seen that, seen that. Behavioral assessment in the workplace, okay? It needs really clear instructions, a really simple smart evidence template that we can use, and then that on-job assessment. So it starts like this. Bobby rocks up at his brand new job in the call center. He gets minimal training. Here's your headset, here's your login, go. And essentially that's what the situation is here, right? So we say, okay, Bobby, during your first day, when Jess is sat next to you, we expect you to collect a piece of evidence that says a good report about a client problem. While you're on the call center, just capture a good report. And what we need to be able to do is that. We don't want to log into something else. We don't want to go somewhere else. We literally want to go control print screen, because most of these systems, they do not have Word, they do not have external applications that you go play with, because if you've got them, you're probably not answering calls. Control print screen, dump, straight into slot 1 of smart evidence. And because it's smart evidence, it flags back at my manager, my trainer's desk, and that little green blob or that little amber half blob says he submitted evidence. So now I'm notified, I can assess it, and I can feed back. We've just managed a training intervention, nobody's left their desk, and he's still on revenue. And because it's repeatable and so lightweight, we can do it a number of times. Grab a screenshot of your Slack conversation with a colleague about where you've asked for support. Just before you hand it off a difficult customer to a supervisor, take a snapshot of your screen so you can show us all of the things that you recorded before you did that. It's repeatable and done. And actually, as we go through that, we get all 5 of our green blobs lined up, and then our supervisor says, I can go and assess you in the workplace. I can go stand next to you on your phone call and check that you greeted the customer correctly, that you followed the script correctly, you recorded all the right information, and either you resolved the problem or you handed it off appropriately. So now, in the learning management system, I've got a binary on-off. Yes, he can do it, no, he can't. In the e-portfolio in the background, should be there, cool. I've got a qualitative assessment that says how well this person can do that job. And because it's so lightweight and repeatable, if I get to how well, and Bobby hasn't well captured that piece of information from the client, I can sit him down off the phone and say, right, we just need to readdress this. This thing isn't going right. And you know what? As soon as we've done that and we go around that loop again, we're there. We're at Kirkpatrick level 3 and 4. Because that is training, changing behavior in the workplace. That is evidence of change at the coalface and results and outcomes of training. And actually, that's how, as an L&D professional, you demonstrate value to the operation. God, that's awful. Can anybody read that? It's okay on the monitor. I'm blaming the projector, absolutely. But we do actually get somewhere close to that nirvana. The operations set the standards. They're the people who are the keepers of the keys about what is acceptable. L&D demonstrates value, and that's Kirkpatrick level 3 and 4, and the esoteric level 5 that some people believe exists, but about that return on investment, that being able to demonstrate value to the operation is key. That's also really important from the HR. It's a much closer alignment about personal and professional development and about the appraisal process, because now all of that information is readily recoverable through our ecosystem. And that means that our HR department have got much greater support in their decision making about that succession planning and who's the right person to promote. There we go. Easy.
I really like the way you incorporate the smart evidence, because that's the next bit on mine, I think.
I just think it's so powerful, just so powerful, because it just readily tracks where people are. I think part of the, not just for call centre and corporate, but for all organisations, the problem is being able to track who's falling off the plot. That's the issue, because if it's just going into a portfolio and we're assuming people are doing things, that's one thing. But actually being able to see, quick dashboard, oh, they're still on block 1. Why is that?
Right. And I think marrying that up with, say, like the mobile app.
Yeah.
So imagine if we take the mobile app to the next step, where you're walking around as an assessor and taking real-time shots, right, and putting it straight into smart evidence from a mobile phone. It kind of cuts down some of that. It's more maybe for a vocational kind of setting and a corporate kind of training setting.
Yeah.
But how easy would it be to say, right, I'm going to watch how this guy's going to secure a car, but they need to work on it.
Exactly.
Go to competency 1. It'd just be
And I think the other part of this, so while I've set this very specifically at that target audience, I think this is the way that you get people in to an e-portfolio, because actually,
See the reason.
yeah. So once you've gone through that call centre baptism of fire, if you manage to stay the distance in a call centre and you do want to be promoted, well, actually, all of that evidence is still present in the e-portfolio, and actually, as you grow in the organisation, being able to demonstrate that as you go through and be promoted, hopefully, now that HR can see the stars.
Yeah, exactly, and it's interesting from a promotion point of view. It's really hard to get all the evidence of stuff that you've done in the organisation, because you might have been there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And the things you did a little bit early on, they're a bit fuzzy in your brain, and you're racking your brain. Well, how am I going to say that I can, meet these particular requirements that you have around this position? But actually, I build up this portfolio of evidence from get-go, day 1 through to now, and you can kind of see that growth.
And I think the difference for me here between the education and the corporate sphere is that it has to be that authentic practice. It's not divorced from the workplace doing something in a classroom. It is actually right there at your desk doing the things. It works equally well for my role. Show me how you did a professional appraisal of another person. Show me how you responded to a client inquiry. Show me whatever. Click, control, print screen, dump. Done.
Some of the people who are kind of working with industry, do you have people go out and work in the workplace, like an internship kind of thing, and then does that employee need to report back, provide an assessment around it?
Workplace, yeah. With nursing and aged care, the students got to do placement, and there's a third-party report, but the third party cannot assess, but they can give information.
Yeah.
Exactly, to help the assessor to give the final judgment. Yeah.
So it's probably around, because in my previous role, we had a number of interns actually, and they do their 10-week, 40-hour internship with us, and that was fine. But it was like, how do I actually provide, or how even do they provide back the evidence of things that they were working on? So we would get them to do things like creating, because it was in a learning and development sphere, creating some slides for our e-learning modules and things like that. But I could only document that by writing, but if they had that in an e-portfolio. And then if it was mapped to certain competencies, I don't know, either traineeship or internships, it usually is things that they
There
need
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
that
community
get back to
competency,
that.
Yeah.
Do they communicate effectively? Yes. Where's the evidence to it? Then I'll have that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
We also bake that at MIT, bake community kind of moment, and that we have a restaurant on site that's run by the students, and you've got the chef and you've got the front of house. There are all the functions through it, and part of the functions are timed to coincide with with when the assessments are due, to make sure that it is authentic in a non-authentic way.
Yes, we do the same. We've got the restaurant,
Yeah,
the hair, we've got the
yeah.
hair salon,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the same.
and the beauty salon, where the students.
And the guys who make
And the
coffee for $1 a cup.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
I remember doing a hospitality module, this is going back a little while, and they had the tape that I was doing it at the restaurant in-house.
Yes,
And
that's
they
right.
actually had a hotel attached, because the people doing hospitality actually did the work in the hotel, which was kind of managed by the students that
Yeah,
were studying
that's
at
right.
the time. But
Yeah.
it's gone back.
They're still stoking the boiler with coal at that point, right? If you haven't got any more questions, please do file them in. More than happy to answer. I think we're packing up the camera. He wants to go home. Thank you very much for your time.